The feedback from our viewers coming in is that they're not feeling this respectable growth that you talk about. And here's what some of them are saying. Can he explain why there is no money circulating as was before among the populace? Why have so many businesses closed down? Why is the unemployment rate so high? The Treasury has cut the 2016-17 budget, I think they mean 2017-18 budget, by 30%. This is the real status of our economy. Meeting statutory obligations by government institutions is not guaranteed. This is the heat of a deteriorating economy. Hello, kindly ask the CS if he's comfortable telling us that the NYS accounts were frozen and that money is recovered, and the judiciary says there is no evidence. What other evidence is needed? Please tell the CS that he should stop lying to us, because what Kenyans are enjoying is economic depression. And I could go on and on and on, but that is the sentiment that's reflected in the feedback that's coming from our viewers, that this respectable growth is not being felt by ordinary Kenyans.
Right. Look, if we didn't have that growth of 6%, the story would obviously be different. If you are now living in Nigeria, where they are growing at negative, you'll see what it means not to have a growth of 5-6%. If you are in South Africa, as we speak, it's different, and many other African countries. I'm just saying that.
Why are we benchmarking against the lowest denominator instead of benchmarking
South Africa and Nigeria are
not
small economies. They are big. If I have to benchmark myself with the US is growing at 1-2%. Europe is almost 0.5%.
The Asian countries?
The Asian countries, yes, others are growing stronger, others are still weak. Even China now is slowing down. But that's not the point. I just wanted to tell you that when I say respectable growth is relative to what's happening in other countries. Whether that growth is enough to sort out unemployment is still an issue. And that is why when I introduced the status of the economy, I told you that, look, we should have been doing more. 7-10% growth is really what we need to make a meaningful dent on unemployment situation in the country. They remain the big policy challenges that we face every day into Treasury. Now, to grow by 10%, many things has to happen. We cannot be. It's not possible to grow at 10%. Well, all the global environment is in the holds. But obviously, when things recover and all that, maybe strong. So, the issue of the challenges of unemployment is really how do we do more to accelerate our growth and absorb more youths entering into the labor market so that we can deal with unemployment. Firstly, we have a whole huge stock over the years where growth has been slow and we're not able to match the labor entrance into the market. So that's why we had a huge stock of unemployed youth. Now, growth has to grow much faster to absorb all these people over the last 10-15 years where growth has been slow. So it's an issue that has to be dealt progressively, and some of the interventions we are doing, the youth through the NYS, through other financing to provide the youth, the AGBO programs we have. All this is also to get the youth also be engaged meaningful in economic activity, so that as we grow, we absorb more in the job. So that remains a challenge. It is a challenge globally. Everywhere you go, youth joblessness is an issue, and so we agree it is a big policy challenge. On the issue of trickling down, and I think I've mentioned, never before we have had huge numbers of people benefiting from cash transfers. We're really looking at the really bottom, the real people manage there who are suffering.
Giving people fish, not teaching them how to fish.
We have to, before you teach somebody how to fish, you have also to cushion that person first. Otherwise, by the time you are teaching, you might be teaching how to fish. You must be dead. You may be dead. So you
in
can't.
a nutshell, your response to those questioning the trickle down is that the trickle down is being felt, but at the most vulnerable levels of society, and that you hope to expand the growth to move the impact into the middle class echelons. That's your response.
Of course, first cushioning the really poor and the elderly who don't have social security. Because of our history and how we have dealt with the pension policy in the past, the issue of orphans, issues of children in a very vulnerable situation. Those are really the people you need to focus on, while you put in policies to accelerate growth. Look at what does it take to growth by 10%. When you talk to manufacturers, when you talk to business community, they say, we want good roads, we want security, we want ease of registering business and all that. We want cheap power. This is exactly what the government is focusing on. Investing in infrastructure takes time. You don't invest today and get a railway day one. You can't do power and get power in day one. And so it is a process, and you have to get the financing to do that. Once those have happened, foreign direct investors come in and invest and create jobs for the youth. But meanwhile, as we are waiting for those things to happen, you have to cushion the poor. And that is why we're doing that. So you see, the thing is, sometimes we have too much higher expectation in the everything won't be done like yesterday. You want good roads yesterday. You want cheap power like yesterday. Yes, granted, it's good to be ambitious and all that. But there are constraints that makes you not able to achieve this at a go.
What about local manufacturing? For us to develop, we must either do agricultural export or manufacturing export.
Correct.
All manufacturing for local consumption. I think our systems, our policies are upside in the sense that in terms of local production, a simple thing like a matchstick, simple things that every town they are hawking, it's not locally manufactured. It is Chinese rubbish. You see fellows flying daggers on the toys. Surely, can't we protect our industry, local industry, first of all from mitumba, so that you can clothing industry? It would be fantastic. They are closed.
Right.
Every town used to have an industrial estate where local people are making carpentry. Now we are importing Chinese doors, and we have forestry in this country or in Africa. Isn't it a shame that actually our systems are completely wrong?
Look, to some extent, this is a very important point you bring, and this is really just to go back to what I was trying to explain, that what does it take to build the local manufacturing base for this? This is when we talk to businessmen to invest, whether to produce a matchstick and all that.
Why would you want to import matchsticks?
That is exactly what we're saying. That you have to put the systems in place to get local manufacturers.
But you used to have manufacturing matchsticks in this country.
Yes.
In a UK. Beautiful. Close.
Some of these things. That's why over time we didn't invest to ensure that our power becomes cheap. It took time. You have to look at this over 2 decades or so. When we used to have that, it used to happen at the time. Maybe the demand for power had not risen to the level we are in. So, if we didn't keep pace with the demand for power, at some point it became expensive. If we didn't keep pace to keep our infrastructure decent, it deteriorated. If we didn't keep pace to maintain security, it deteriorated and it created insecurity. Investors fled, local investors discouraged, then people started importing. So Now we are fixing those problems, getting the fundamentals right for private investors to invest. You've seen how we have moved from the bottom there, moving up in terms of doing business indicators. We have been now ranked now position 92. It's still not good, but we have improved from 130 something. That is a sign of that the business environment is improving. The number of inquiries, foreign direct investment, the people who want to come invest in Kenya and Africa in general, has been rising. Some have materialized and they're investing heavily, and this is what now helps. In addition to that, the policy environment that we are putting in place, we are putting to ensure that once we create the base to produce, we have to protect these industries. But you can't start protecting, like the example you gave, Mutumba. Yeah. It's a good thing. But I want you to repeat this thing when you are in Kikomba there.
Of course.
And then you will see the reaction. The reason why, the reason why is that we are alive on this issue, basically. Really. That's why you've seen what we are investing in. We are doing a lot on the textile industry. If you have to stop Mutumba now because you want people to buy new clothes, can't happen, and the jobs are going to lose. But if you take time to build the base to produce textiles locally here, garments that are being imported now, and we are doing that. By the way, the export processing zone here produces the same jeans that goes to GP Penny in the US. It's worn for 4 days or for 4 months. It's returned to Kenya. Yeah, in the form of Mutumba at the same price of a new one in EPZ in the London. So why should we not have a base where that jeans new Kenyan wears a new jeans here? That is what it takes to do that. So we have to build that base fast. By the time that every Kenyans know that if I want a jeans or a shirt, I can just buy it locally, I don't have to import. So you change the incentives from importation to domestic consumption of the goods that are produced. But you cannot stop importation and you don't have the goods produced here. What will happen? Okay. Consumers will just don't get the goods that they want, So that's why I'm saying it is very important to look at these things systematically and what it takes. It's not just easy that way and say, oh, tomorrow we want to produce matchsticks and toothpicks and all that, and there is nobody to produce it. You'll run short of toothpicks, obviously, but you have to set the base.
So therefore, another question that's come up has been our growth versus our debt levels.
Yes.
And you've talked about needing another loan for the country. In fact, we're not doing another Euro bond this time, which you had been interested in earlier. You want a syndicated loan. You're looking for about $1 billion, 100 billion shillings. Why? How? Look,
it's glad
if we're doing well.
It's glad you brought that question. If you look at our budget for 16-17, I mean, if people had spent time or liberty to look at how it is balanced, we have our revenues that we are projecting to collect. We have our expenditures. The difference is the deficit, meaning that our expenditures are higher than revenues. What happened if you have a deficit? Just like yourself, if you have your income and your expenditures are higher, you borrow, isn't it? That is the same.
Or you live within your means.
Yes, you can live within your means, but that is an issue that you need to know first. If you are able to borrow and invest, if for example you want a house and you are able to borrow and get a house now, why would you just say, oh no, my salary cannot fit to borrow and buy a house, and say I'll stay without a house until I accumulate the same income to buy a house? It's the same to government. We could have said, okay, balanced budget, revenue, expenditure, but we need the roads for us to increase the capacity of the economy to do more. I mean, to bring the energy cost down, you can't say, okay, just let's spend exactly what we can raise. It's a good thing, but in a developing economy, where the demand for infrastructure outstrips the current supply, you can't sit back and say, okay, we can't borrow and not invest in infrastructure. So, but the key question is our borrowing sustainable? I give an example.
Our viewers don't think it is.
And I'll come to that. I'll come to it because they have also to explain why they think it's not sustainable. You know, to go to the Twitter and just make a sweeping statement that it's not sustainable, give me the facts, and I'll give you the facts now. Yeah, so that you understand what it means by sustainable. And I was trying to break it down for you to understand, and also from my individual point of view, because government is a sum collection of Kenyans. Yeah, so if I pick an example like you have your revenues, you have your expenditures, you can choose to say, no, I mean, I'm not borrowing, I don't want to live with borrowing. Everybody is actually borrowing. In a way, you may have a mortgage, you may have a car loan. You could choose not to have a car and a house and just live with that. But it's not a good thing to always do that way, because if you can borrow now and be able to save in your rentals and all that, it's a good thing, and you'll acquire a house. Same to government. We are saying we want to acquire infrastructure now to sort out the problem of bad infrastructure that we have now, which is constraining investors not to come in. So the most important thing is, are we borrowing to consume, or are we borrowing for infrastructure? If you're borrowing to consume, it's a bad thing. It's not sustainable, because at some point you have not increased the capacity of the economy to grow and bring investors and be able to raise taxes in future to pay your debts. So that's how you look at it. You know, so to borrow to consume is a bad thing. Now, we are not borrowing to consume. If you look at our development budget, it has increased, and we have been borrowing to direct this infrastructure. If you are doubting, how was the railway finance?
And the problem with that is whether that development, that borrowing, the entire amount of money goes to that with that.
Yes, we can come to that.
Some of it is stolen.
We can come to that. We'll come to that. I think first you appreciate that we are borrowed to do because you can see the railway line for sure. You don't want to tell me that there's nothing going on there.
But again, the pattern of value for money.
The roads.
Again, the pattern of value for money. Are we paying more than we should for this railway? Are we paying more?
I think we can come to that. I can come to that about the value. So, what I wanted to address this issue of debt, so that I hope I'm trying to make it simple. And if somebody is telling me it's not sustainable, let it come and demonstrate to me in the numbers. If in any case we are really very transparent, we do provide the medium-term debt strategy every year. I wish Kenyans could read this. Maybe I need to find a way of disseminating this much wider, and even in other languages, so that people can understand this debt issue clear. Because it is sometimes overblown in a way that the narrative is put in a wrong way. That's why I was just saying, as long as you're borrowing and investing in the increasing in the capacity of the economy to help the economy sustain, investments in future, is not a bad thing. Again, we have to look at the level of borrowing so that you don't overborrow and be unable to pay in the future and burden the future generation at the expense of the
and that's the feeling that we are mortgaging the country's future.
That is what I want to explain. What is sustainable debt?
What have you decided is sustainable for Kenya, for Kenya's future
generation?
Now,
I was coming to that. There are some benchmarks that we look at. We have to say debt is sustainable is that your future repayments will not threaten or move the country into insolvency. Yeah. So you have to ensure that the economy is solvent over a long period of time. Yeah, but it's just like an individual. If you overborrow now, you'll be auctioned. Yeah. Same to government. You don't want to borrow because at some point, if it is too much, you are unable to pay your debt. So there is a benchmark that we are looking at, and we have said we always don't want to be. We have set our target to be about 50% of GDP. You know what it means.
We don't exceed that.
Yes, in what they call net present value terms, which is something. But we are watching that. If it goes beyond that, you are likely to face a debt distress going forward, just like how other countries like Greece, for example, has gone into. By the way, based on World Bank and IMF benchmark for an economy like Kenya, which is a medium performer, the threshold is 74%. But for our own prudence...
Sorry, what do you mean by middle performer? Have we crossed into middle income?
No, we're just... middle performer is a country that its policies that they are pursuing and the level of income and all that, we can say, as we are growing at 5% and compared to other emerging economies, we can just say we're just a medium performer. There are those who are super performers, there are those which are low performers and all that. So if you are a medium performer, you can take up debt up to 74% of GDP. We for our own caution, we have put ourselves 50. Currently we are at 48.
48.
Yes. So we still have room, but it is tightening. That is why we are saying, look, that's why we are lowering our deficit. We are at some point, because of the expenditures for the standard gauge rail, our deficit was over 8% or 9%. There. Now we are targeting 6%, and we are gradually bringing down to 3%. The idea behind that is that to ensure that we keep our debt below 50%. Our benchmark from best of the international practice, we can still live up to 74%, but we don't want to go there because of the prudency that we are ensuring. If you want to compare with other countries, I don't want really to compare with the US, for example. Their debt to GDP is 130. Japan, 200%. You know what it means by 200% of GDP? It means that your debt is actually 5 times your GDP. That is how Japan is indebted. US is double that.
Does that mean we are better than Japan?
No. You see,
what does that mean to ordinary people?
That's why I want to come. Let's say, look, I don't want to compare myself to those economies, but you can just see how indebtedness can mean. For our own purposes, we have said, look, we want to live within the 50%, although we can do 74% comfortably, but we have set ourselves, and this is the documents are presented to Parliament every year, stating our debt. Unfortunately, people don't read that. They just read a nominal figure and say, okay, debt has increased this year by 200 billion. I hear that, Jubilee government has borrowed 5 times what the previous government has borrowed.
Okay.
But those government didn't invest in standard gauge rail.
Okay.
They didn't invest in the road networks of that. And so what are we comparing with? Yeah. So I think I wanted to bring this very, very clear so that.
And I think you've unpacked it.
Yeah.
So
but
let's take.
There's something you talk about us borrowing more on this.
Let's come back to that issue because we